My friend says caffeine's a drug. I said, oh, tell your friend, fuck you.
I don't want to be your buddy, Rick. Just want a little breakfast.
Hello, welcome to Breakfast Punx episode 63.
Can you imagine it? We're back, sort of, kind of.
And as Siobhan was just saying before we pressed record, we don't need to be funny anymore. We're not funny people.
We're not funny people.
Which is true. Extraordinarily
no, we're really
true.
not. No, it was never meant to be funny, but you were just like, I need to, can I think of anything funny to say? I'm like, no.
No,
for us.
no, you
no,
can't.
you can't. No,
Nor must you.
It's been 10 months and you've thought of nothing funny.
It has been 10
months.
months since we last did one of these podcasts.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's rather silly. Feels rather silly. We feel rather silly.
I feel incredibly silly right now. Yeah, it's been a weird 10 months. I don't think we ever really stated why we stopped. We stopped prior, so the last episode we did actually was a bit of a one-off. So it's actually been over a year. We stopped just after, it was about April last year. After we were feeling, I don't know, we didn't really give an explanation. We just didn't do another one. And we said, hi guys, we're off. I don't know that I can't remember, but I don't think we rounded it off and said, this is the last one, goodbye.
I don't remember. It was so long ago.
No.
I think we did.
But I think we were kind of, the feeling I remember is that we were a bit done, a bit just wanted a break from doing a podcast. I'm not really sure particularly why, but life has changed an awful lot. I would say.
How has it? Well, this isn't really what the podcast is about.
No, I know.
For anybody joining us for the first time, this podcast isn't just us telling you about the last 8 months of
FYI,
our
this
lives.
podcast is normally about weird shit and sometimes music. That's what our tagline used to be. I don't think it was quite that.
And breakfast.
Shit. And breakfast, long time ago. Gosh, it used to be breakfast.
We used to be the Breakfast Punx, Siobhan.
Used to be a bit about film, used to be a bit about music, used to be a bit about weird shit, and then we just kind of narrowed it down to weird shit.
Well, we also used to do news stories,
Of course.
weird news stories, and just before we get started with anything,
Would you like a new?
when we
news
decided
story?
a few weeks ago to start doing this podcast again, and we'll get to the reasons why. As we go on,
we'll get to that.
I thought to myself, I better prepare some news stories, because I was thinking, got to be funny.
Gotta be funny.
But now
out.
it turns out I didn't need to be funny at
10
all.
months,
According
not
to
been
Siobhan,
funny
I've
yet.
never been funny. So there's absolutely no reason for me to try. But I did find one very lovely news story, which I really only want to read to you because I need a funny picture to use for the picture of this episode. So
There you go.
if you've looked at that picture, it might give it away a little bit. But and it also is a very old news story, and probably for people who are on social media and in any way keep their thumb on the pulse whatsoever, this might be like the most famous thing that's happened in a long time.
Background to that, Dave is not on social media, so I hope, and I don't know what this story is, so I really hope it's something that just everyone knows and you don't.
I think it might be. I've definitely had my head in the sand since this is from August 2023.
What the fuck?
But it's only just turned up in Fortean Times. The
Okay.
wonderful. That's where I get my news from once every month. Is buying
by
magazines.
news, you find out about things 10 months too late.
Well, apparently so.
That's good.
British Transport Police attended an incident near Wolverhampton railway station and arrested a man, took his dog into care after he was found to be too drunk to look after him.
Aww.
He was also unable to explain why the dog was dressed in a neat buttoned-up blue denim shirt, but a picture of him wearing it posted by the police on their social media accounts swiftly went viral.
Oh, no, I don't think I know this.
Now,
I
in
need
which
to see
case,
this dog.
Siobhan, listen to Siobhan's reaction, but also please just do look at the picture above this episode.
It's like a human shirt. Why does it fit him like that?
It's the greatest picture I've ever seen in my entire life.
Oh, that poor little dog.
So there is the news.
The news from 10 months ago.
The news from 10 months ago.
That's gone really well.
So sorry, back to back to what we were saying.
Well, it was about the time of that dog incident that we made our last podcast.
It was.
And it was about, I imagine it was about wagon. having just gotten back from a music festival.
Indeed.
And we did say, gosh, we're back. This might not be a one-off. It turns out it probably was a one-off because it's been a solid while now.
Siobhan only knows that because we just listened to the first 5 minutes of that episode.
Yeah, it was quite embarrassing to hear. It's definitely not hyped us in any way.
And as a result of that, we realised that probably everything we were going to say at the start of this episode was completely null and void because it's exactly what we said then.
Yeah, exactly.
So now we've just gone on about dogs in shirts.
So it's going to be a bit different now. I'll say how the last 10 months have gone. We've changed quite a bit. I think we've been on a little bit of a journey of sorts. I'm going to just, for those who even know us or care, our lovely beloved cat passed away.
I do think we talked about her on the very last episode.
From the wagon one.
I think so.
Well, I think since then, we've been living in her honour. Yeah, we definitely did mention it. So we've been living in her honour quite a lot since then. Doing what we fancy, trying to go on as many trips, trying to, I don't know, just have a nice life.
I should just say as well that living in our honour is a phrase that we've used a lot. So therefore it just came out of your mouth like anybody listening to this would have any idea what that means.
It's what she would have wanted.
It's what she would have wanted has been our catchphrase. And what and we did say this on the last podcast, but what that led to was us getting very fat and drunk.
Yeah. and poor because we just kept going away.
And poor. But we had fun.
Yeah, lots of times.
It's because it's what she would have wanted.
One of those things we did was go to America and get married.
We did do that.
Done that, if anyone cares. I care. And I think...
How was that?
It was all right. Not too bad.
You were just going to jump over it. You probably should. I mean, again, this podcast isn't just us talking about what we've done with our lives. But
well, it's a small catch-up for anyone who's ever listened before and gives a shit. And
not only did we get married, Siobhan, we got married by a Paul Stanley lookalike.
That is very true.
In the Kiss Chapel.
It's just become so normal to me. I just assume everyone gets married this way, and then I show people pictures, and they're like, what the fuck?
Well,
I'm like, oh, yeah.
It's quite fair.
Yeah.
With like 3 days' notice.
Well, you had you knew.
Well, I knew.
I had 3 days' notice.
You had 3 days' notice. And it was fantastic. I should say that the Kiss Chapel, very romantic because it's actually just a crazy golf course.
Yeah.
With a room.
And it feels like it's at the back of a shopping centre.
I mean, it is
because it kind of is. It's in a casino, in one of the hotels in Las Vegas. And so, yeah, the casino bit is the casino bit, and then the other bits just feel like a shopping centre, and the chapel is just like a curtained?
What on earth? We're making up words now.
I know. It's good that I've been talking for loads of time.
Good Lord.
I know. Gosh. We're going to ease into this. It's all going to be fine.
We are easing into this. I should probably say we've started afresh with this podcast as well. We're not cutting anything out anymore.
So you're hearing everything.
Probably is the worst idea for having not done it for 8 months.
Well,
so just bear with us.
By the time we get back in the swing, it will be fine.
Into it.
But anyway, it's like a curtained door at the back of a shopping centre, and you can peek in and see the people who are getting married before you. It's quite not private. But yeah.
And when we turned up, 2 very drunk English people, one of us more drunk than the other, it should be said. There was like a proper wedding going on with real people who had got properly dressed up. I'd bought a cowboy shirt of some dodgy shop in Hollywood Boulevard.
It's lovely.
About 4 days, 3 days before.
Cowboy boots from the charity shop.
You had bought a sort of onesie arrangement.
Boiler suit. Let's call it a boiler suit. Let's call it what it is.
If you want to be in Slipknot. And we were fucked off our heads.
Well, we'd been sat indoors in a tiki bar the whole day, and so you just forgot that it was sunshine outside, get smashed, got outside, and we're like, fuck me, it's the middle of the day still. All I've been doing is drinking cocktails. I have no awareness of the time. We're about to go into a casino and have even less awareness of time and continue drinking these American measures, which, you know,
and I assume you remember what you were thinking at that time because you didn't appear to be in a remembering sort of a mood. But we turned up and these lovely people, I mean, it was run by absolutely lovely people. And, you know, they didn't know what the fuck hit them because drunk Siobhan walked through the door and this wedding was like a mixture between don't get me wrong, it was fucking perfect. It couldn't have been any better. But it was, I imagine, not the sort of wedding that they are used to. We were singing, you were dancing just randomly.
Paul Stanley's offensive nipples were out.
Well, Paul Stanley was an older gentleman who had obviously spent his life in the sun. And he was a big guy
was
with like
massive.
muscles and what have you, but he had very unusual looking nipples.
He did. They were dried out by the sun and basically very strange. And at my eye line.
Yes, and whilst he was reading the
eye
vows,
Yeah.
Siobhan turned to me and thought that she was whispering, but whispered in a voice that everyone could hear. And I mean, the guy was literally about half a foot away from us and said, "Look at his weird nipples."
I couldn't concentrate.
And from that point on, I mean, in none of the pictures he's smiling. I think
No.
the people that ran the place fucking loved us, but I don't think Paul Stanley liked us very
No,
much.
he scarpered at the end and he took one of our ring boxes, so not forgiven. Not forgiven. Steve, whatever your fucking name was. I'll see you.
Let's not name and shame Steve.
Steve, the Paul Stanley man from Las Vegas. It could be anyone.
Dear Lord. So yeah, we got married. Is
We
the
did.
point. That's the comeuppance of that.
But I guess, like, I don't know. Other things we've been doing is a lot of. I'm gonna be an arsehole and call it spiritual growth. Sounds like a silly word to use. Maybe spiritual growth is too damn heavy. But we kind of banned ourselves from TV and had to find other things to do instead of mindlessly killing time. And I think it's led us down some really nice little roads.
I
of
think,
sorts.
yeah. I mean, maybe we'll get to this word spiritual later when we get onto what we're going to get onto. But I suppose, yeah, I think that we've changed a lot about our lives.
Yeah.
Largely for the better.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons, it's probably fair to say, that we started this podcast is sort of related to that, because we had a conversation not very long ago about sort of our relationship, I suppose, fundamentally, and what we sort of missed having a window of opportunity like this every couple of weeks, as it was, which obviously we had just completely made up. I mean, it's a very I appreciate that everyone's doing podcasts and podcasting and stuff is completely normal.
Yeah.
I would say that two people recording themselves chat to each other is fucking weird, right? I mean, we all just accept it now, but it's bizarre, and it's a bizarre concept. And I think one of the reasons why I kind of came to the conclusion that I didn't want to do it anymore was because it just felt like more noise being thrown into the abyss of the internet.
Especially when it felt like towards the end we're just like, what on earth can we make it about next time? So it did become creating content as opposed to getting anything worthwhile out of it.
I see. I never felt that way, actually. I don't think personally, I don't think I would have done it had I not sort of believed in the things that we were talking about. But it's not necessarily, I wasn't necessarily critiquing it, and I'm certainly not saying that we were great at it or that the podcast was brilliant either. But I just mean, look, you don't sit down and do this for hours if you don't believe in what you're doing.
True,
it's like
the
people that play in bands and sort of pretend that they don't really care about their band. It's like, well, you just spend all your time doing that, so what's the matter with you? Why do it then?
You've got
to have some, it's not about thinking you're great, it's just about believing in the thing you're doing, or why the fuck are you doing it?
Yeah, no, completely. No, I do agree.
But the conversation that we had about us was that actually I think our relationship missed having this funny little window of time where we talked about, we might have talked about this years and years ago on the podcast.
It definitely got mentioned at some point.
It almost doesn't really matter anymore because I'm sure, that was literally years ago. But, we've done things like little couples books where we sit down and we spend an hour talking about our relationship and stuff.
Yeah, like guided conversations that with the aim of increasing communication and fixing anything that maybe needs fixing along the way.
Yeah, and we continued. Well, we've done that on and off. We're far from perfect, but we did that for a while, and that's really useful. And we sort of started doing that again. But the thing is that what we missed out on a little bit was not necessarily not being inside our own heads and like talking about our relationship, but talking about just something like a thing. And now another aspect of this, I suppose, and I almost feel like I don't want to say this out loud because A, everyone's going to sigh, and I totally understand, and also B, because in 3 weeks' time, this might all have changed.
Yeah.
But the one time that we did used to do that was that we often used to if we had a day off together, we would go to the pub, just the two of us often, sometimes with other people, but often just the two of us, and we'd drink and talk about whatever shit, right? Just like everybody, you know, I know it's not, you know, that's completely normal. Normal. I'm not saying that like it was an amazing thing.
What a revelation.
But what we found was, or what I found, or maybe what we realised, was that the only time we actually sit down really and talk about shit is then when we go into pubs and we're talking.
Yeah.
And so I have stopped drinking as of 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And plan at the moment, again, this might all change, and I'm not being a twat about it, but plan on that being for the least foreseeable future for a lot of reasons, which maybe we can get into, but I don't know if there's a need. And so my concern a little bit was, well, we're probably going to remove that aspect of our life where we go to the pub and just have a nice chat with each other about whatever weird shit. And of course we can do that, but, and I'm guessing that this is probably true for a lot of people in their relationships, without giving yourself a kind of space to do that sort of thing in, it's the thing that gets lost.
Exactly. And I think, and it's just to also say that it's not necessarily the drinking, and I think that you're wording it specifically to follow this, but it's not the drinking that makes you talk. Obviously, the more drunk you get, the easier it is to talk about anything. But we were finding that, and I think we attached it to drinking for ages, and we were just like, oh, we're only having these really long, in-depth conversations when we're drunk. But it's not. It's from the second you sit down in a pub with a drink in front of you. And it's exactly what you just said. It's about having that space, providing that space. And I think if you're not drinking, obviously people can go to pubs and not drink, and I'm not poo-pooing that at all, but it's been our thing for so long to just go to a pub and sink not just one pint but maybe 5 or 6,
and that's been we've been together for a decade, longer. So that's a big, over a decade. That has been it's been a big chunk of our life, and obviously prior to this I'm sure we both pretty much did the same sort of thing with various people as well.
Exactly.
I've drunk my entire adult life, and that's kind of my way of. And I'm, again.
Well, it's about
hardly, an unlikely story. But.
Yeah, it's totally the same. So what I'm trying to say is, it's not like we need booze to do that, although it's very helpful. But it's also that you don't need booze to go to the pub. However, I think after a little while, I've just wasted so much money on lime and soda. There's only so much I want to drink. So I think you're right. It was about trying to find a space to have that chat without having to go to the pub and make it. It's not unnatural, but I think natural to us was going for a pint, going for a big lunch, day drinking, and then coming home basically and talking all day. So I think it's about providing that space without it feeling forced.
Yeah, and
not
there is
forced. That's too strong a word, but unnatural.
But there is another side to this, which you only learn when you try and do something like this. Is that doing a podcast is quite an interesting thing. Yeah. Because whilst it is just the two, we spend all of our time together pretty much, healthily within reason, not all of our time. But doing a podcast, there's kind of like having a sort of vague idea that there is an audience of some sort. Almost creates a different type of space as to the way that you end up talking to each other. And I don't mean that like we're normally screaming, horrible to each other. I don't mean that. No, I don't mean that at all. It's absolutely not that.
No, I know.
But it's just that it kind of, I suppose, almost in a funny sort of way, it sort of formalizes things. Yeah. Formalizes things.
Yeah.
And I think that's, I would never have known this had we not done a podcast. But for me, it was like, that was quite healthy for us, I think. Having like a weird, let's compare it to something else, which is probably very obvious to anybody listening. It's almost like therapy. It's almost like having an imaginary therapist in the room.
Yeah. Well, that's what we do with the book.
Having couples counselling. Yeah. But the only difference is that our couples counselling is about Discordianism and juggalos.
Yeah. And you are our therapist, whoever's listening. So thank you for that.
So anyway, that's really one of the reasons why we decided to start doing it again.
Yeah.
Fundamentally for purely selfish purposes.
Yeah, 100%.
Because, and there is another side to this, but we started doing it again because it helps us, I think, bond with each other, or it helps our relationship in some way. And so I suppose what I'm trying to say there is that what we decided was, it doesn't really matter if anybody actually listens to this. So
I'm assuming no one's listening to this.
From this point forward, and we are planning to basically start doing this podcast again on a regular basis.
Yeah.
From this point forward, we are just doing this for us. This is not for you. But here's another point.
This is not for you.
I think that the podcasts that I like listening to are the ones where people can turn off that bit in their brain where they sort of think, oh my God, someone's listening to this. I better be on my best behaviour or whatever. I don't think we've ever been very good at that.
No, I don't think we have at all. And I do think that, so part of what we've been doing in the last however many months, and you've been doing it a lot longer than I, but just to say, when we made the podcast before, I'd pretty much never listened to a podcast, and which I don't know if that was obvious, but instead of watching TV now, we've taken to putting YouTube on and just watching different podcasts. Obviously, we're not videoing this, but many people, as is obvious, video their podcasts as well, and it's a bit more like a little talk show amongst two people, perhaps, and just watching people have a conversation.
By the way, don't worry, we're not going to start videoing this.
No,
You're not going to have to watch us in our pants.
Heck no.
in front of
the windows.
on our sort of sad half table that we sit around.
Yeah, I sit on a box drum, so you don't need to see that. But I just think I've learned a new appreciation whilst doing it, whilst having these conversations. I get a lot from it. But I've now really get a lot from seeing those conversations, or seeing those conversations. It doesn't even make sense, but hearing those conversations, because we do it so much more regularly now. And I think, I don't know, I just really enjoy it. I don't think so. If you're enjoying this, brilliant. If you're not, it's not the first reason that we're doing it. But I do think that a more conversational thing is the point of this now, as opposed to, I don't know, news. We had a news story today. I guess we'll bring things up. That's going to be very.
I don't know. That
might be an occasional thing, but it's not going to necessarily follow the structure that it used to. Had you ever listened to this before, and if you're listening to it now, then there may be some form of structure moving forward. But as of yet, not 100% sure what it is. Just we know that having these conversations is really good for us. People should be having these conversations more. I appreciate we're not talking about anything specifically yet, but just having a space to have conversation is so important, and we've lost it in general life.
Well, I think,
and we specifically found the point where we'd lost it. But yeah, I think general more people could just benefit from having space to talk.
But the reason that we've lost that space to talk is because we've filled it up with so many other things, because 100%. We have so many distractions, and I suppose that's. Well, and this is not holier than thou in any way, but that's one of the things that's good about turning off the telly or turning off the,
social media
and what have you. But also, I suppose, I aim, and again, let's be clear about this. We are not the greatest podcast in the world. This is not going to be the most. It's not going to be the most intelligent thing you've ever listened to. No. It's not going to be the most thought about thing you've ever listened to. But one of the things that I think that there is too much of, generally speaking, just in our culture, is that we're constantly bothered about what other people are thinking about us in a way that is completely subconscious. I think for most people, I'm not suggesting that everybody's constantly thinking to themselves, "Oh, I can't be myself. I need to pretend to be this way or that way because people on social media will see this and then they'll judge me for it."
Yeah.
But I think that our culture, increasingly, but I mean definitely over the course of the past famously probably the past 10 years, has become a place where people are not genuine. They're not honest. They're not doing that in a mean-spirited way, I think. And again, when I say people, that's an absurd thing as well. I think I'm going to use a lot of the word we, and when I use the word we, I am talking about myself, I am talking about Siobhan, but I'm also talking about humans, probably, or my assumption on humans. But I do think that we are constantly censoring ourselves, and don't worry, we're not going to suddenly start coming out with all sorts of this is not turning into we're not going to become
we're going to finally be the far right podcast you always knew we would be.
No, I don't mean that, but it's not censoring ourselves about our mean-spirited thoughts, or not censoring ourselves about some massive political debate. It's censoring ourselves in much more minor ways than that, of like, who's taken a selfie before and not taken 15 of the same selfie and then picked the best one? Yeah. Right? I mean, taking a selfie in of itself is, we've talked about this before, and I'm not going to start going on my rant about selfies. God. But, the point that I'm trying to make is that we've got used to being in this culture where we continuously do 20 things and pick the best one that makes us look the best.
Yeah, we present a curated version of ourselves that has every element that we want to show off to the world, and then we aren't happy. We then anxiously seek the feedback afterwards. So it's not like, I mean, it's the whole point of social media and the likes and stuff, isn't it? But it's also tons of things when it comes to, let's not get onto the self too early, but like things that you think are your likes and dislikes that are actually what you want people to see rather than what you genuinely like. That I just think, I don't know. It just baffles the thing. I don't know. There's just things that we
everyone whose real favourite band is Green Day would say that their favourite band is Screeching Weasel or probably Black Flag. That's the sort of thing you're talking about.
Yeah, no, it is.
People that, and we all do that.
It is an element of that for sure.
But I suppose the point that I was trying to make is that if there is one thing that I certainly aim to do, and I think you almost do this, but I have so much respect for you because of this. You basically are this by default.
What
is that? Well, we're just not going to pretend.
Oh, okay, good.
There's not going to be any pretense, hopefully. No. Or are we going to aim to not pretend? There's one of the beautiful things about saying this isn't for anybody else, this is just for us, is that, well, therefore, whatever weird shit we're going to talk about, you're just going to get it.
And we can just hold ourselves up in the house if we say anything silly.
Well, no,
or not, because we don't care about what people think.
But I think as I trust in myself, and I very much trust in you. I know that there's nothing to come out of the closet.
I know, I'm making it out to be. I'm just.
Well, no, but I almost feel like the way that I've worded it makes it sound a little bit like, "Be careful, guys. This is about to turn into a Douglas Murray podcast." It's not.
It's going to be so
it's
far
not
from
at all. And because it couldn't be, because it's not. But the point that I'm trying to make is that, and I don't know, I've never really gone back and listened to the 62 episodes of our podcast.
Oh,
and
no.
certainly
I think
not
I listened to the first one
any time recently. But I mean, I don't think that we've ever actually had it in us to not be fairly. I don't think this is a good thing. I think we've only ever just been able to just blurt shit out that jumps into our head anyway.
I think the diminishing listeners probably show that. No, I'm joking.
Well, no, we've had quite a lot of listeners since we came off the air. Actually.
Have we?
Yeah,
really?
Funnily enough, I've never so I've stopped looking at everything.
Yeah,
I've removed myself entirely from civilization, pretty much. And one of the things that I've used to look at quite a lot. I mean, even once I had sort of removed myself a little bit from social media, one of the things that I found myself going back to, in the way that we all end up going back to all of these fucking apps and things, was the podcast app, and being like, oh shit, we had five listens today, or oh shit, we had 20. Oh, we just put a new one up and we had loads of listens on that.
Oh, no one likes this episode, so when we did it about this one, so maybe less of that.
And so that, obviously, clearly I'm not ever going to do that anymore. But the point is that I've not looked at the app since we've made that last episode, which is 8 months ago. So going back to it now, it was sort of like, fuck me.
Yeah.
We've had loads
of listeners. Another thing I liked about that, just very quickly, the looking back at who listened to what episode, some of my favourite episodes were the least listened to, and I just don't care anymore.
Well, yeah.
It's going to be about all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Or things we like.
I don't know if we ever cared that much.
I know we don't care, but it's, I don't know. It's a lovely thing to restart with a new aim.
We are going to be real, but not good. I suppose that's what we're trying to say.
Really real, but not good. That'll be us. Well, with that, do we want to talk a bit about?
Yeah, let's just have a
how
quick.
we move forward.
Yeah, let's have a quick chat about. So this episode of Breakfast Punx podcast is basically going to be us having our discussion. This is how real this is, guys. Are you ready? It's basically going to be our discussion about what we're going to do with this podcast going forward.
We do have a loose thought.
No, we have a loose thought.
But the fleshing of it is not done yet.
Yeah. And so maybe we should move on to that.
Yeah. Well, with it going in a slightly different direction and not being about breakfast, and not being about...
Can I just say, the breakfast thing was a nightmare anyway.
It was.
The problem is, maybe I mean, I don't know. It's pointless going back, but maybe now, because of what we're about to talk about, it's worth saying. For those people that didn't start listening to this podcast until maybe 20 episodes in or something, you would have no fucking idea why it was called Breakfast Punx. The reason that it was called Breakfast Punx was because just prior... Basically, we started this thing in lockdown.
Yeah.
And... just prior to that, we used to run a cafe.
Yeah.
I roasted coffee. Mm-hmm. You made donuts.
Yeah.
we made nice breakfast in the
Yeah.
cafe, but it wasn't strictly a breakfast place, really, I suppose.
No.
But we
But
thought
coffee and donuts are
coffee
like
and
standard
donuts,
breakfast.
standard breakfast. So Breakfast Punx, because it was going to be a punk thing, and we were known. If we were known for breakfast items, and so it all made sense. And to begin with, we were reviewing a coffee every time. We had
reviewing a little snack from somewhere local.
We had all the right ideas to begin with, and then
Yeah.
slowly but surely, one by one, everything just got. Basically, I
Pushed
think
to
in
one
fairness,
side.
well, it got put, all the things that we didn't do very well, we pushed to one side. Because I mean, the
Yeah.
reviewing of the coffee was basically us going,
That's nice.
That's nice.
And the
isn't
reviewing
it?
of the food was,
No,
that's also nice.
That's good, isn't it?
Then we dropped movie reviews because we were terrible at
Absolutely dreadful at movie
Uh,
reviews.
it. Then did it kind of more or less stay the same?
Yeah, then we just had news and then some subject that we
with
talked
some
about.
music scattered in there.
And then we started doing Patreon. Our Patreon episodes were basically like this, where just two people would chat for an hour about
Yeah.
whatever jumped into their heads. And then the last couple of episodes,
last
I
two or
think,
three,
ended up being basically like that. And
Yeah.
that's probably what this is going to be like going forward. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll see. I think we're open
Who
to just
knows?
doing whatever. And so it might take different shapes as we go.
Yeah.
But that was why we were called Breakfast Punx Podcast. Being called Breakfast Punx Podcast 4 years later.
Yeah. Gosh, 4 years.
You've stopped making donuts. The cafe.
Did we start
has,
right at the beginning of lockdown?
Well, all right, maybe it was 3 years.
yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. That's
It
crazy.
was pretty early on in lockdown, I think.
Yeah.
But I still roast coffee.
Yeah.
If anybody would like to buy some delicious coffee,
Mhm.
shamcityroasters.com. I don't know how much longer for, if I'm honest, but maybe one day we'll talk about that as well.
Yeah. Well, I stopped the donuts.
But you've stopped the donuts. The
Yeah.
cafe is long since forgotten.
Long gone.
And we are now just two pricks who, I mean, you're as far as like, if anybody knew who you were, they would now know who you were because you're in a band. You weren't in a band when we started this.
That's true.
You'd never been in a band before we started this.
No way.
There's no reason for us to be called Breakfast Punx
No.
Podcast anymore.
No, there's absolutely none. It feels it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Especially as like when it was like, it was going to be also weird shit and DIY punk. It may or may not be that.
We
don't
still
know.
like
Probably not-
both.
Yeah. It's going to, we like
and I
both.
mean, I think the weird shit, as far as I understood what it meant, is exactly what we're going to be talking about
Yeah.
going forward. But the thing is that I don't think that anybody understood what that meant because
No.
it was just in my brain.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's such a weird curated amount of weird shit. And it still will be, and it'll still be quite vague and random. But the focus is now on that
Yeah.
as a
And maybe
theme for conversation.
if there's a good story about a dog in a shirt,
yeah. Well,
this might become just a dog in a shirt podcast. Your favourite specialist dog in shirts podcast. And I imagine if we did that, we actually would get some listeners.
we'd get far more if we were just rating dogs in shirts.
Because we're about to cull the vast majority of people listening.
Yeah,
I think
so.
there's an old.
Oh, God.
We bought. This is the second time I'm bringing up Black Flag because I'm desperately trying to be cool.
Because you're desperately trying not to show that your favourite band is Green Day.
Yeah. My favourite band's Blind Melon, so fuck you all.
Is that what you're saying?
Actually, that's not true. I should say my favourite band is the Jesus Lizard.
Yeah!
And
Just
I
found
literally
out.
found out about 10 minutes ago. Really, actually, this is the Jesus Lizard podcast going forward. I didn't realise that until
None
10
of
minutes
these
before
things.
we started. Because they're releasing a new album. They're playing in Brighton in January, and now my mind's blown. Because I've never seen them live. I could have seen them live. So I could have seen them live in their absolute heyday.
Yeah.
At the Garage. They played the Garage in I think it was about 97 or something, and I was going to go and didn't. I was like an idiot.
I mean,
'cause
if anyone
probably my
can-
paper round money ran out for the fucking week or something.
What were you 17?
All right. I got my job or age mixed up. I was trying to be bawdy.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough.
So Jesus Lives are back. So
And that's going to be quite an experience.
yeah.
That's going to be such an experience. He can still go, so it's going to be good.
Oh boy, can he go?
Oh boy, can he go.
But yeah, so
it's not about that.
sorry. What I was going to say. Again, no cutting in this podcast anymore.
Jeez, you wish there was cuts.
Is that Black Flag had this song called "The Process of Weeding Out,"
Oh yeah.
that they used to play. I think they used to play it first in their later sets, and it was a lot like a 20-minute long instrumental of just noise. And the idea was that if you've turned up to hear Rise Above, you can go fuck yourself, and you can just listen to this noise.
Oh
and
my God, I love that.
The process of weeding out was kind of getting rid of anybody that was just.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I didn't finish that sentence because I didn't know what word to use. Getting rid of anyone who was just, because nothing I would have said would have been very pleasant, I suppose. But their attitude certainly wasn't a pleasant one, so I suppose that would have been apt. But that's not, we're not doing this with any attitude, but I think we are about to do our process of weeding out number.
Well, because we are dropping the name Breakfast Punx.
By the way, that's not why I think
That's
we're all
not
going to
it.
leave.
What the fuck? Yeah. Riot. They're not going to be called Breakfast Punx anymore. No, we're going to rename ourselves something, and I think people are just going to switch off now. To better describe what this podcast aims to be moving forward. And by aims to be, what me and Dave aim to do every 2 weeks. That sounds more appropriate. Mm-hmm. And so we are changing it to a word that I'd not heard of before. Mm-hmm. And I'm probably going to say it wrong. I believe it's a Turkish word called sobet.
Yes.
Saying it out loud makes me sound like a prick.
This will be called the Sobet podcast
there
going forward. Here's where I got this word from a book which is called Dialogues with a Modern Mystic.
Literally, the listeners are just flying down now. Like, what the fuck they call themselves? All fucking talking to mystics, are you?
Just going back, might be a reference. I mean, I'm assuming no one's listening to this if they've not listened to us before, but everybody.
Also, if they were, we've been talking for like 40 minutes and gotten nowhere. So if they were, they've definitely gone.
Everybody in Norfolk just turned off their radios.
Especially if people have really dropped off after 30 minutes and gone, oh, listen to the next one. They come back and we've changed our name and we're going to be talking about whatever this is.
Well, so Sobet
literally
means the spiritual talk of friends.
There you go.
It's a style of informal investigation between brothers and sisters on the path, which is central to the way of the mother.
Let's drop that way of the mother bit, but
I think I didn't want to read all of that, but you were like, yeah, fuck it, read it, yeah. Yeah, that was Siobhan's sort of process of weeding out, very much. Now, to be very clear, let's be very clear about this.
Very clear.
This is spiritual with an extraordinarily small s. Is that fair to say? Is that a good description? I
think it is, but I'm going to come back to that in a moment.
Okay. I think that we need to have a discussion about what it is that because this is right. Going back to our original version of what this podcast was about, we used to say it was about weird shit. Right?
Yeah.
And I always used to just throw that out there, just assuming that everyone was in my head and that made sense to them. And to me, weird shit was just this kind of cultural conglomeration of a load of stuff that I was interested in, which was a bit unusual. The sort of stuff that some people might know about or have heard of, and a lot of people wouldn't. But I don't think it was ever made clear. We just said, this one's about weird shit, and this episode's going to be about Discordianism.
Yeah, and I think
this is about weird shit, and this is about a metal festival in Germany.
Yeah,
it's like it didn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't make sense at all.
So I do think that we need to be very clear for a couple of reasons. One, because I think possibly people have thought, oh my God, are Dave and Siobhan religious now or something? And I'm not going to lie, like some degree of probably like spiritual with a capital S, spirituality will probably come into this, but I'm not talking about that specifically. No. I'm fundamentally, when I think of what spiritual is, it's about connecting to something. It's about finding meaning in something. It's about what is important to actually making our lives worthwhile. And what I see in culture, and again, I'm probably going to end up using the we again, because I am talking about myself, but what I see in culture is that we have largely stepped away from appreciating things in a meaningful way. Yeah. Just to give a very obvious and very quick example of that, if I've ever had a religion or a spiritual path, it was punk. Mm-hmm. And to me, music is immeasurably important to my sense of self, my understanding of the world, It
Connecting to
educated me.
others.
It created a community. It did everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not. Well, maybe at some point we will compare the two, because I did think that's quite an interesting conversation. But it's what religion does to religious people.
Yeah.
Right. Religious people find all of the things that I found in punk.
Yeah.
In religion.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that other people find this in all sorts of different ways, probably a lot of ways that I don't understand. I'm fairly confident that a lot of young kids, I work in a bookshop now, so that's why I'm bringing this up, is, get this from like manga, right? They seem to. There's some sort of connection that they all have to that. Or you might even get this from, I don't know, fucking pop music, or being a big fan of Take That or something.
Going to the gym, I imagine, for various people.
You?
Not just me. It's not my religion, but I think for some people it can be. I mean, there's so much endorphin raising, there's so much community, there's so much going through something that's difficult and coming out the other end. I can get that.
But you can do it in two different ways, can't you? And it's exactly the same with music. And to me, what I see happening, and this isn't just about punk, this is just about kind of, I suppose, our connection to art generally, is that we connect with it in a very superficial way. And I would always, I lay a lot of the blame to this down on, social media and what have you. We're not going to have that conversation now, but I imagine at some point in the future we probably will. But I think that we live in a society which is incredibly superficial. And that's fine in a lot of ways. If you want to just sit in front of Netflix for hours, then good on you, enjoy it. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that there is anything wrong with it, but I think that for myself, but also I think probably for most people, but maybe not, who knows, you might be absolutely fine, but hopefully you'll still be able to get something out of these conversations. But for me, it just feels like a disconnection that was not there, definitely not there 20 years ago. But then you could argue, well, 20 years ago, Dave, you were young, and now you're old, that's why. And I can accept that, and that could probably be true. But I think I've seen it reduce in myself and probably on the people around me. And I don't mean, by the way, that's not aimed at anybody. I'm not talking about the people around me like close friends. I just mean like go to a gig and people in the room. There's a disconnection which I think has just got worse and worse and worse. And I think COVID had a big... We talked about this when we talked about the UK punk scene on a very old episode, I think.
Yeah.
We touched on a lot of this stuff. And I think that there's something lost, and I've heard a lot of thinkers. I've read a lot of thinkers and heard a lot of thinkers talk about the meaning crisis. For example, John Vervaeke, who's our new favourite person, talks about the meaning crisis. Like a lot of people talk about this stuff and often put it into different categories. So for someone who's an anarchist, extremely on the left, they would put this in the context of their politics. And them not the people in power not sharing their politics. But whereas somebody with the complete opposite political view would believe that the exact opposite is happening, and it's all the woke people, and it's all the the culture of the time or whatever. And I think that none of that is true. I think that I think that overall that stuff is completely superfluous. And that what we've lost is a connection to something which I think, therefore, and I mean, this is backed up by sociology, and I'm sure everybody's heard this before, but, as our lives have got progressively easier and we've all got richer, our mental health has all got way worse. Well, why is that? Well, I think probably a big reason for that, and again, we'll talk about this in the future, but a big reason for that is probably because 50 years ago or 100 years ago, we all had religion. Now we don't. But also, I think because we replaced religion with something that was really, really valuable, which was art. And, when the first steps of this, like, not to go, this is not a history lesson, but, like post-Reformation and like the Romantics, like when these people were questioning what religion was, and then ultimately really questioning religion and God and whether it existed and all that sort of stuff. They were talking about replacing this with art and culture. Alan de Botton talks about this loads, and I think I don't know whether they did. I don't know whether the person on the street, I'm sure they didn't exactly experience that as such. But the idea of replacing religion with art made sense. But now I feel like we've replaced religion with art, and then replaced art with Netflix holes, YouTube YouTubers,
Yeah.
flicking through Instagram pictures.
We've given, and I think it comes up in those of the Adam Curtis documentaries. It's like we've gone from religious to artistic, but now we're living in this era of
Nothing.
the self and being individual, and the only thing that caters to an individual is having yourself reflect. Like, people just want themselves reflected back at them, and people want things around them, which is the antithesis of enjoying things with other people. It's the antithesis of learning or finding new anything. It's just, I will continue looking after myself, ensuring that everything I do is to further my own gain. It's not really, and that's just in our culture. I don't think anyone goes out to be a selfish person, but all of our culture leads to being catered for as an individual, as opposed to anything that looks after the group or anything that looks out for connection and meaning with other people, with anything. It's just, how do you get through a day being seen, feeling important? That's all it is.
But though, and it is connection,
yeah,
which actually creates happiness.
Yeah,
it's and I mean, we all know this.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that people don't have friends and they all just live in, and I imagine as well we are lucky, because let me as well, just to go back to the punk scene, if there is a community that exists in the modern times, punk is up there with them. It's a hell of a lot more. There's a hell of a lot more connection and community within the punk scene than there is in, I don't know, gamers or something.
Yeah,
and that's nothing against gamers either, but but there used to be more.
Yeah,
maybe.
It's still less than it
that's
was.
What I'm trying to say.
I think it's still like relatively is still higher than many other groups, and we're still very, 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 very lucky to have it. But you're right, you don't really feel that community energy at gigs all the time anymore. Or if you do, it's cliquey because it's people you already know, and maybe less and less people are going. I mean, there's so many reasons for all of those things, with people less and less attending group things and going to gigs and stuff. But one thing that is notable is that it used to be the thing to do. You would do it to see your friends, and people don't see each other as much anymore, it's not, for loads of reasons.
But I think also it's not just about,
not just
it's not just exclusively about that. If you go back to this kind of idea that religion is, if there is an idea, right? I don't necessarily agree with this, and this is, if we've not weeded you out yet, this, what I'm about to say, is going to really weed you out. But like a lot of, I think a lot of, it probably is a lot of Christians, to be honest, say this, but a lot of religious people would argue that, and I'm going to use their terminology, not mine, but again, you're about to press off, just to warn you, that we all have a God-shaped hole in our heart, right, that needs to be filled with something. And so if you don't fill it with God, then you need to find something useful to fill it with. And in the past, what we've filled that with is like culture, like really important, great artistic things. And now we're filling it with TikTok. Netflix binges and what have you. So, I'm sorry, I'm basically repeating myself there, but just wording it differently to make it even harder for you to accept, because I've brought God into this, again, this is not spiritual with a small s, guys. But I think that there's something useful about that metaphor, that we have a space inside us that needs to be filled with something. Yeah. Ray Cappo, who's a Hare Krishna. Are you ready for this, guys? If you've not weeded out yet, we're now going to talk about Hare Krishna.
Yeah, I know, but at least he brings us back slightly, because I was thinking of him in the same way.
Yeah, but Ray Cappo, and not just Ray, I mean, Ray Cappo stole this from another, I'm not even going to start talking about the Swamis that I've been reading, but Ray stole.
I mean, we're stealing everything as well.
So of course.
He's all right.
It along. Sorry, that was lazy language on my part. But he talks about like being careful about what you put in.
Yeah.
So the idea being that, I think from his perspective, and again, this is more religious than I would like to. I think we've gone down a bit of a route. I've taken us down a route too early for this sort of stuff. But it's kind of along the lines of like, if you fill your head with really violent imagery, and I think he's probably might be talking about, I'm putting words in his mouth entirely, but if you're playing a computer game and it's full of violence, then I don't believe in this. You're watching a horror movie and it's really horrible. That kind of old religious argument that's kind of like the things that you see make you. And I've never agreed with that, and I'm very much against that. And I'm all for like freedom of expression and actually, I think that those things can be extraordinarily positive for people. But I think there is something there. I mean, I think that there is something about the things that we allow to go into our brains. If you put constant... This is an obvious one, and hopefully you've all immediately thought of this, all one of you who's not been weeded out.
Hello.
You know, hi. Like, if you're putting really negative news stories into your brain constantly all day, right? My dad does this, right? I caught him watching GB News the other day when we...
Oh, yeah. Oh, and your mum was like, oh, he likes watching that programme where the police raid houses.
Yeah,
I was like,
it's just constant negativity going into his brain.
Yeah.
And so, and in fairness, he's probably more positive than he should be, considering the sort of stuff
he talked about recycling the other day.
Exactly, yeah, I know.
Amazing.
So what a guy. But the point that I'm trying to make is that you know, the shit that you put into your brain is what's going to come out of your mouth, fundamentally. That's the idea. It's not entirely that, and of course there's a filter, and of course you absolutely have free will and all of those things, but fundamentally what you choose to shove in comes out.
And it changes you, like it legit changes your brain.
Well,
like,
but that's cognitive science, which at point we are going to
trying to bring in something other than religion, Dave. Just another one.
Well, yeah,
but yeah,
you know,
yeah.
So I suppose the point that I'm trying to make is that when we talk about spirituality, we're not having just talked a bit more about religion than I would have liked.
Yeah.
We're not talking about specifically religion.
No.
We are talking about meaning and things that are worth our they're worth putting into our God-shaped hole.
Yeah. What are you going to put in your God-shaped hole?
Maybe that's what we should just have called this
God-shaped hole.
This podcast. No, that sounds like a 90s ballad.
Heart-shaped box gone real wrong. I definitely agree with the meaning of spirituality in this sense being that what is connection, what is meaning, but also the journey to get there. Like every version of spirituality I ever see, not always about religion. In fact, specifically not about religion. There's a lot of spiritual stuff that we've read about and listened to that is specifically not religious, and actually, like you say, looks at it from
more stuff is there's that spiritual, not religious, tick box on all of
which
the things,
has a lot of come back to it at the minute as well, because I think a lot of people are seeing that the religion part is the main bit, but we're not going there because
we're not going to go there yet. We probably will go there at some point, but yeah, that's definitely a question of whether the thing that people now call spirituality, which again is not what we're using as our means of spirituality, but whether that is just religion. Yeah. It's just that it's just a bit cooler. I'm a Wicca. Well, yeah, okay, but that's not actually different to being a Christian. No. Really. No. You know, good on you. Have a nice time. Dance in the woods.
But I guess it's about finding a way to find meaning and connection in the world. And it's the journey that you go on to do that. And again, it was Ray Cappo that said the thing about where he hopes he can just influence anyone. That's not what we're doing, by the way. We're not looking to influence anyone, but I really like what he goes with this. He said his aim is that he would like to influence anyone to find their spiritual path. So he talks about his religion and his spirituality, and he had someone write to him and say, oh my God, thank you so much for your writing. Thank you so much for the work you do. Because of what you do, and he's a Vedic yogi teacher, he goes, because of what you do, I'm now a Greek Orthodox priest.
Or monk.
I don't know, but completely not the religion that Ray Cappo follows. In fact, possibly not similar at all. But he was like, I'm just so happy that someone found their way. And I think, again, it ended in religion. And I'm not saying that we're about to become religious throughout this entire thing. But I just like the idea of being open and seeking different things that are interesting, and I think it's the openness and the idea that you can just discuss stuff and hash stuff out and work out what is important and what this adds to your life and how it can make you treat people better or be better or feel better. Or, you know, if you want to make it about yourself, then how are you going to feel better? If you want to make it about other people, then how can you better be around for other people and find a reason? Not a reason. I don't believe there are reasons for being around, but let's not go there.
Well, I suppose the only thing that we can do in the context of this podcast, and maybe this is the point, is that we're just going to go on a journey and see what happens. And again, journey is a horrible word to use in this context because it sounds extraordinarily religious. But the point is that we listened to something yesterday, I think, or the day before, which specifically said there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. And it made me think of the podcast, because I think in the past we've desperately gone for knowledge.
Yeah.
And so what knowledge is learning stuff.
Yeah.
Reading stuff.
Putting facts into your brain.
Yeah. I mean, in its most extreme form, it's like maths, right?
Yeah.
You know, but it's also like knowledge about stuff.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, when we did this podcast before, I was always very conscious of trying to get a bunch of facts.
Yeah.
It's like, we're doing this about this subject, and I need to read these books, and I need to tell you all of this stuff.
Yeah.
So that's knowledge, but wisdom is something else. Wisdom is something, and again, I'm not saying that we're wise, or definitely not saying that we're knowledgeable or that we ever were, but the point is that I suppose what I'm trying to talk about, I think what you were saying there, was that what we're aiming for, what we're trying for, is not knowledge. We're not looking to provide you with a bunch of facts.
No.
We're looking for wisdom.
Yeah.
We probably won't find it. Just a
heck
spoiler alert. We probably won't find it.
These guys ain't wise.
If we do, it's just going to be Ray Capo said this.
Yeah.
Ray Capo said that.
Yeah.
But what wisdom is more about the ineffable thing that makes you connect, and like it's like wisdom is something different to knowledge. It's got nothing to do with facts. And so I think within the context of what we're going to do going forward, is aiming for more that kind of, we're going to experience shit, tell you about it, talk about it, talk
Figure
through things, and just see where we end up.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's not really an end point.
No.
But, you know.
And I do think, it's just interesting. We were talking about the spiritual being with a small s. And I think small s specifically because we're not claiming to know our stuff, and we're not claiming to be gurus, and we're not claiming to be taking anyone on some kind of spiritual journey.
We would be such bad gurus.
Terrible. We definitely would run a cult. It would be bad.
I mean, we're slightly better now, but 3 weeks ago, me as a guru would have just been like, let's get pissed.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the
hint. Dave's quit for 3 weeks. It's going well.
I think it's 4 now.
Oh, I think it is.
Yeah, give me a chip.
Give you a chip. But I definitely, I realised I was thinking potato chip and just was completely forgetting about the lovely chip.
Like a performing seal.
Yeah. I was just like, what the fuck?
Give me a salt and vinegar.
Throw you a chip. Yes, it's spiritual with the small s, but spirituality is not to be poo-pooed. And
No.
I think people do think it's going to be, and we haven't done a good job of dissuading you from that it's going to be about religion, because it's not. But people hear spirituality and think, oh, religion, you can't be clever and be spiritual. You can't believe in science and be spiritual. Like, I just kind of feel like, which is where religion gets tarnished as well. I think there's something to be said for it. It's a small s to put a proviso on how this isn't going to be wildly intellectual or good, or no, it won't be good. But like, it's not going to be like far-reaching and changing anyone's lives, and nor is it trying to. But I do think people should consider the ways in which they could, or the ways they are not being spiritual, and thinking about the ways in which you just go about your day mindlessly doing whatever you're doing, and wondering at the end of the day why there's this feeling that you are disconnected and a bit miserable. I get this from speaking to loads of people at work and my friendship group at the gym, and that's not to poo-poo anyone.
Throw them all under
I know,
the bus.
I'm not throwing anyone under the bus.
What
What I'm trying to say is, I hear it in so many different groups where, how are you? How's your weekend? And it's just misery, and no one's miserable. Everyone's got it so good right now. Literally, there are so many things to be upset about in this world, and none of it is happening in the people that I know. Like, there are, illness and things that aren't fun, but on the wider scale, we have it so good, and yet why is everyone just so miserable and so seeking something that they don't know what it is? And so, yeah, I just think...
God-shaped hole, isn't it?
It's that God-shaped hole. No, but I'm just saying, like, I think that's where... And it's happening more. You do see the resurgence of things that people consider spiritual. Like, we'll talk about that loads. Buddhism's on the high. Everyone's a witch now. So there's things
Mindfulness is probably the big one, isn't it?
Of course, mindfulness is there. So it is happening and it's seeping in, but it's about thinking about why we do those things and not just mindlessly doing them.
Well, it's also about not engaging with them superficially.
Yeah.
And again, working in a bookshop, which has, books about lots of different titles, there's unquestionably, whilst a lot of people are buying books about witches, for example.
Yeah. Sorry, I feel like I'm just shitting on witches right now.
No. Good on you. If you're a witch, you do it. Like, as not just in, just whatever, whatever anybody can find. But there's a way of engaging with that, which is worthwhile.
Yeah.
And fundamentally, it's probably about jumping in with both feet.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll talk about this an awful lot. But it's no different to punk, right? You can engage with punk in a way where you really engage with it. You really listen to music. You really try and, engage with the politics of it and engage with the discussion about it and all this sort of stuff. Or there's a way that you can just skip past loads of songs on Spotify, go to a gig and spend the whole time in a different room to where the bands are playing, and that's not bitterness on my part, by the way. I'm not someone in a band. I'm not sort of like, you fuck you.
No, but it's
but
true.
It's like there's ways to engage in these things, and then there's ways to just pretend to engage in them.
Actually do it. Don't just take a photo. Don't just take a photo of you doing it.
This is a bit out of date now because I don't think this happens anymore. But I always remember, and I'm definitely not going to name any names, but this is a completely different life of mine. So I'm not talking about anybody that I know now at all, or probably knows me. But when you used to be able to see who was going to events on Facebook, there were certain people that said they were going to every fucking event ever. Yeah. Never saw them once. Yeah. People that I knew well, never saw them at any gigs, but always said that they were at all the gigs.
Yeah.
And then would share something on the day saying, "Oh, this gig's gonna be great. Really looking forward to this gig," and then just wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And it's like collecting experiences. It's like saying, "Oh, look how many things I've done," but you've not actually done them. But then, to be honest,
then you're not the person that's had them, so you haven't changed. You haven't become.
And that's the weird shit about the world that we now live in.
Yeah.
People
just want to say that they've done it. Whack a picture on Instagram.
But again, that's too general. I know what I've said is too general, but what you've said is also too general. Yeah. It's not people, and it's not. It's not. It's that this stuff is even possible. Possibly. Yeah. I mean, and I'm sure I will, and I definitely have previously in the podcast. I harked back to some like perfect time in the 90s or something when everything was perfect. Of course, it wasn't perfect.
No.
But by any means, and I'm sure there was all sorts of different people engaging in ways, that were superficial or not superficial or whatever. Definitely felt. I will say this though, it did feel like the scene itself. People writing about the scene in fanzines and things like that, bands and things. There was a different attitude to how seriously they took it, I think, fundamentally. So I think that is an actual change that I think you can absolutely say between the 80s and 90s and maybe even the early 2000s, although everything turned a bit shit then, and kind of the social media age. But I think, we can't be too general because it's like... Also, what engagement means to me and what meaning means to me is different to what engagement or meaning means to anybody else. And so the only thing that we have to back up anything, that if we start moaning on about people not doing this or doing that, the only thing we have to back that up is that there is proof, actual proof that our society as a whole is worse off, is richer than it's ever been and worse off than it's ever been.
Yeah.
And I've already said this, but so if we ever end up throwing out phrases like that, what people do this. It's not.
People have no choice.
Actually, I mean, because we're not very good at this. We're not public speakers, so there is going to be times probably where we make some statement which is in of itself a bit too simplified.
I'm probably going to do that quite a lot. Apologies.
No, I wasn't talking on your behalf by any means. I'm sure that we both will, and it's hard not to.
Yeah.
Particularly when because we're not going to prepare a great deal for these conversations.
No.
And so what's going to happen is what comes out comes out.
Yeah.
And again, in some respects, I don't care. Yeah. This is just for us.
Again, thank you to that one person who's listening. You're a legend.
You've not been weeded out.
Sorry, they've gone.
We're gonna do an hour of freestyle jazz in a minute.
and Morris dancing, and all you can do is hear it. It'd be great.
But yeah, so the Sobbet podcast
That's us.
will be every 2 weeks. I think we're going to get back into our old routine. We used to post them every other Thursday. I think we're going to try and do that again because I do think, and I'm sure this is something that we're going to talk about, but I do think like having routine is very good.
Yep.
For us and for everybody. And so this is going to be our routine. And we are going to use ourselves sort of as guinea pigs of just more or less doing what we've been doing for the last, in reality, we've been doing this probably for the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Just finding out about stuff, which hopefully is interesting, and talking about it.
Yeah.
In hopefully a vaguely interesting and mildly insightful way.
And learning along the way. That's the whole point of sounding something out, speaking about it, having a two-way dialogue that adds to your insights.
Yeah. And
so even if you guys get nothing out of it, apologies, hopefully we will.
Well, it should at least, if nothing else, it should maintain my sobriety. That's all I'm asking for.
I can't wait for episode 70 just to see where we're at. Yeah. You'll at least have to be sober on a Tuesday, so there is that.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But maybe we can talk about sobriety some other time. I don't know. It's just like a lot of the things that I can imagine us talking about. Sobriety, and definitely all of the stuff that's touched on real spirituality and like actually bringing up religion and things.
Yeah,
are the sort of stuff that my heart would have sunk if someone else had talked about. And
here we are.
And so I suppose maybe that's one last point that I wanted to make is that hopefully we aren't crazy people that have gone off the deep end.
That's another thing. If in episode 100 we look at these podcasts
well,
again,
yeah. Well, we might go off the deep end, but we're
Yeah.
starting at a place. We're starting from a place, and again, we're not starting. We've been doing this for ages, but just
and also we're not
talking about
starting. Sounds like you're aiming to get somewhere. We're not.
We're not aiming to get anywhere. But at this point right now, what we are is a couple of people who are really interested in stuff, and want to improve their own meaning and understanding of the world and connection to other people.
Yeah.
I think that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah, it's good. We should need to cut that and use that at the beginning of as our tagline.
We're going to need to, what we've just said over the last hour and a bit, we're going to have to put into a little tagline for the next episode in 2 weeks' time, so that we can actually, if people haven't listened to this garbled mess, they might have some vague idea of what we're going to be talking about. But we're just we're just seeing where it takes us.
Yeah.
And hopefully looking at this stuff with some cynicism. There will be some cynicism.
Of course.
I'm desperately trying not to be cynical about people, but I'm extraordinarily cynical about ideas. So we are going to be critiquing things. This is not going to be a kind of...
Isn't all this stuff great?
Yeah.
But it might also be a bit...
But if things are great or we find them great, we're going to try and talk to you about why those things are great. And one of the problems with that, and this is another thing that I'm stealing this directly from a writer called Elizabeth Oldfield, who wrote a really good book recently, is that actually the things that are really important, she's a podcaster too, and the things that are really important are the very things that you can't put into words. So doing a podcast about them or trying to write a book about them or writing them down is completely pointless. And in that respect, this podcast is going to be completely pointless because the very thing...
That's the tagline.
The very thing that we're aiming for and the very thing that we're trying to aim to get across to anybody listening, again, if there is anybody left, is the very thing that if you could put it into words, it would no longer be meaningful in the way that it needs to be. So I suppose, just to conclude, what we're trying to do is a podcast where we don't care if you're listening.
We discover
we couldn't care less about you, the listener.
True.
We
it's going to be completely pointless. I think
aiming to have no knowledge about anything.
True.
Because we're aiming for wisdom.
Yeah.
And
it might not go anywhere.
It's not going to go anywhere.
It's not going to go anywhere.
And I hope you enjoy it.
See you next week.
So we will see you in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
I think we can probably sign off. How was that? I was very nervous about doing this podcast, and I can't decide whether it was simply because we haven't done it for 8 months, or whether I think what we just talked about, I'm just going to pat myself on the back for a minute here because I'm fairly sure no one's listening. I think that was quite brave.
Well, I think you're brave too.
Not for me,
Well,
for
I think
us.
you're brave
us
too.
as- I think. Do you not? Do you not think?
What,
do you not?
coming out
I
as
don't think we've really
spiritual,
come out as
spiritually
seekers.
Interested.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that when you word it like that, it doesn't sound quite so extreme. Yeah, I mean, maybe, and again, maybe it feels. I think as the person doing it, you feel a lot more. I feel like we've put a lot more out there than probably if someone's just listening to this. They probably just think, oh, well, that's just. I mean, you were pretty much talking about that sort of weird shit before. You just used different words for it.
No, it does feel more exposing. It feels a bit more like, hi guys, this is the weird shit that we're definitely going to be talking about. Sorry if you wanted Norfolk news. Like, it's definitely. I feel two ways. I feel a bit like people who are like, oh, that's back. I'd say people again, very loose. That one person maybe.
I can't stress you enough, Siobhan. A lot of listeners in the time we've been away.
Well, when they all come back and
Our
they're
graphs
expecting,
are wonderful.
oh, we've got some good charts. But yeah, no, I'm two ways on it. One tiny way. No, it's not tiny actually. It's annoyingly bigger than it should be. Is that expectation from people who've ever heard this before, and it's completely changed to something that I'm not sure how much people really cared about the weird shit bit, and now the entire thing is going to be weird shit times. Siobhan and Dave have read every spiritual book.
There's that one guy that like started listening at the start and was like, you know what, I love weird movies. And then,
Breakfast.
And Breakfast. I
love
love Breakfast. I love
weird
it when
movies.
people.
I could get into punk.
Yeah, I love it when people review coffee. That's the thing that I really like. And then listen to the first episode and thought, you know what? I wasn't expecting to enjoy that news segment, but that was great.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed that. I don't know about that other weird thing where they tried to talk about positive news stories.
Yeah,
but,
that hour in the middle was shit. But
and then slowly, but surely, that guy, he's stuck around this whole time, right?
Whoever this mysterious guy is, we
and
made this person up. By the way.
He was like. Then we dropped the movies. We dropped the coffee reviews. And he was like, well, I'll miss it, but it's all right because they're reviewing,
still do movies.
Surf Nazis Must Die today. And then we dropped the movies, and he was like, well, at least we got the news still. That's fine.
Yeah.
And
music.
And then he's waited 8 months. Right, and he's like, I think they're going to come back. On that last episode, they said they might not do it again. But
all
they
did was
might.
talk about that music festival. But I think when they come back, they'll come back with news and music. Just as I remember, they might even bring the movies back.
Yeah, and then we'll come back, and there'll be a picture of a dog in a shirt on the front cover, and he'll be like, "Oh my god, they're back!" Because it'll be really funny. There's a dog with a shirt on the cover. This is amazing. If you're still listening,
I'm so sorry,
Fred. I'm going to name you Fred. I am
Fred?
so sorry.
So sorry, but widen your horizons. Everything's fine.
You never know. In 2 weeks' time, we might have something very wise to say.
Who knows?
At least give us a couple of years before the wisdom really starts coming through.
The wisdom will kick in soon. we can all figure it out together. So everyone, let's go get wise.
Oh wow, that can be your little tagline.
I know,
hey, I'm Siobhan. Let's go get wise.
As soon as I said it, I felt sick in my mouth.
Well, it's sticking. It's stuck already. The fans love it. I'm already getting
Cheers,
emails.
Fred.
I'm already getting emails saying, "Oh, make sure Siobhan brings back that catchphrase." We love it. They're going to be chanting it when we do our live show.
Let's get wise. Let's get wise.
Oh, this is going to be
T-shirts.
fantastic.
Oh my god. Fuck, I hate myself.
Just a picture of your face with "Let's Get Wise" under it. Perfect.
Oh god.
Well, we'll call it a day.
Yeah,
if
please.
you want to, so here's another thing. Don't bother. I mean, you can if you want. I suppose you might see it, I suppose, but I wouldn't really worry too much about commenting anything on social media because.
No.
And I apologise if you've sent us a message in the last 8 months, you won't have got a response because I've not looked at it. And
I've logged out of the thing, so
You're
we need to get on
very,
to that.
very welcome to send an email to shamcityroasters@gmail.com.
Yeah. Best way.
If you're new to this, have we even said I'm Dave?
Oh shit! Hello, I'm Siobhan. That was terrible. We've done the whole thing not saying our name.
We haven't got that much to say. Like I say, you can go and still look at Sham City Roasters if you want to buy some coffee. Siobhan's in a band called Comeback Clit. You should go and listen to them. I'm in a band called Haste. You should go listen to them.
Yeah.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time for the first episode. Although I think the more I think about it, I think we're going to keep the number, and so it might be 64 or something. But we will be the So Bet podcast, and we will talk about more of what we've just talked about.
Yeah. See you then.
Have a lovely few weeks.
Bye.
Bye.